So a quick recap of what we've been talking about. Basically, we've been talking about project management and how to build a career, and also what are the things you should be looking out for when it comes to project management. And we try to look at the two main methodologies or two main project management bodies. We looked at the Prince 2 methodology as well as the PMI framework, and we told ourselves about the 777 things about Prince 2, the seven principles, the seven themes, as well as the seven processes. That was a couple of weeks ago. Last week, we went into Project Management Institute, the PMBOK guide, to look at what PMI talks about project management, the project management knowledge areas. And we said we have 10 knowledge areas, and we spoke about those 10 knowledge areas last week. And also, we went into the processes and we spoke about the application of some of them. And so last week also we started out with the major application of what you need to know as a PMO person. And also in the next 1 hour, that is exactly what we will be talking about. So in the next 1 hour, what I've been talking since is actually what you need to know as a project manager. What are the documents you need to produce? How do you manage your stakeholders? What are the things you need to look out for? How do you plan a project from start to finish? What are the processes involved? What are the skills involved? That's what we've been talking. So for the next 1 hour, it will be funny that for just 1 hour, I'll tell you as a PMO person, what do you need to do when you get on the job? What are the things you need to know as a PMO person, PMO analyst, PMO lead, PMO administrator, project planner, PMO planner. What are the things you need to know? But don't forget that there are still in depth to some of these things that we can't finish in just 5 weeks of 2 hours a week. So a lot of the further reading will be more into it's what you will need to do, and also further readings are things you need to go on YouTube. You need to listen to few things like I will be talking about assumption. I'll just talk about assumption for 5 minutes. Assumption management is actually a little more than that. So you need to go on YouTube, look at scenarios where assumptions are used. You need to also go on YouTube and learn how to use MS Project. So I'm just trying to drag my feet so that a lot of people can join. You need to know. So, what are the things you need to learn after this class today? Number one thing you need to learn after this class is you need to learn how to use SharePoint. You need to go and learn how to use SharePoint. So majority of the things you need to learn are tools. So you need to go and learn how to use SharePoint. Just go on YouTube, just type in SharePoint training. You will definitely see a 10-minute, a 20-minute training on SharePoint, how to upload your document, how to check out a document, how to understand the versioning of document on SharePoint. And so you need to learn how to do that. Next thing you need to learn how to use is, if you're in London or you're in UK, apologies, if you're in the UK and you're a PMO person, you need to learn how to use MS Project. That is very key on how to use MS Project. Yes, there are some roles you will not get. There are some rules they won't ask you how to use MS Project, but it is always a plus, and they will always go for you if there is MS Project on your CV, that you know how to use MS Project on your CV. They will always reach out for you or reach out to you. So you need to understand. So you need to understand how that works basically. So go and learn how to use that, even if it's the basics of how to input your task, how to input your duration, how to do your calendar, how to do your predecessor and successor on MS Project. That those basic, just those five basic things, you're good to go in using your MS Project. There are a lot of things that are more to that, but just those basics, you need to learn how to use it. And also, if you can go on YouTube and learn how to use Jira as well as Confluence. If you can learn how to use Jira, there are 20 minutes, 30 minutes a video on YouTube on how to learn Jira. You need to go and learn how to use Jira as well as Confluence. So why am I saying all of this? Because you need to put most of these things on your CV as the buzzwords. These are things that when they take your CVs through their search engine, they will pick it up because some of the IT projects now, they use Jira on some of the IT projects to document defect from the testing to implementation to build. So, and as a PMO person, they will expect you to be able to track some of those defects, and they track some of these defects using Jira or Confluence some or most sometimes. So learn how to use that, and also learn how to use Excel spreadsheet. There is a training on Excel spreadsheet here at Blue Sky. Learn how to use just few things. If you can do few things on Excel spreadsheet, you're good to go as a PMO person, because they want you to be able to input data. They want you to be able to actually do some formatting. If you know how to use your VLOOKUP, if you can write macros, come on, you're up there, and you can learn all of these things. But I'll put my hands up. I'm putting my hands up where I am at the moment. I know how to use Excel, but at the same time, I don't know how to use Excel. When I say I don't know how to use it, I don't know. As simple as VLOOKUP is. I've done VLOOKUP sometimes, but if you don't use, so the thing about Excel spreadsheet is, if you don't use it often, you will forget. So if you ask me, if you put me on the Excel spreadsheet and you say, you know what, Ayo, can you quickly do VLOOKUP for that? I'll tell you, I don't know how to use it. But you know what? Because I've done it before, I'll go on Google, just type in formulas or how to use whatever, and I can quickly do that. So you need to know how to do some of these things. If you can write macros is not compulsory, but if you can learn how to use it, you will definitely be up there. And like I said, if you know how to write your macros, you might not even need to know how to use the MS project. When you get on the job and you say, what do you use in planning? You tell them you use Excel spreadsheet. How do you do that? Just tell them I write macros. I can remember one of the roles I went for, I got that role. I went in as a program planner, as a PMO program planner for that particular role. And one of the things I said to them is, they say, "Oh, we need to know how to do look ahead. We want to look ahead. We want to be able to say if a task is due and it's not 100%, we need to be able to see that." And I said, "Oh, that's a very simple stuff. With a punch of a button, I can write a formula for you on MS Project, and I know how to write form." So the way people can write formulas on Excel, I don't know how to write formulas on Excel. I can write a lot of formulas on MS Project. And I tell them, I'll write formulas for you in MS Project with a click of a button. You definitely know you can get all your reports out. You can get all your reports out and all of that. So with that, trust me, I got it. Oh, you mean with a click of a button, we can get our look ahead. You can get our 3 weeks look ahead, 4 weeks look ahead. Can get our progress report. We can get our variance analysis report on MS Project. And I said, yes, you can. I all of that. And that interested them a lot to say, oh, someone can come in and simplify our process. Don't forget, what they want you to come and do is to simplify the process. So as a PMO person, what you're coming to do on board is to simplify the process for them, is to take the headache off the project manager or the program manager or the portfolio director or the heads of project, and make their life quite simple. So you need to always market yourself in that way. And the best way to market yourself is to tell them how to do things. Does that make any sense? Someone is asking, how important are SQL, Power BI? They are not really, as a PMO person, they are not really that important. But you know what? You never can tell what's going to get you the job. So why not just learn it? Why not learn it? Have an understanding. Then if you know you can defend that during an interview, why not just put it on your CV? Do you understand? Because don't forget that what you're going for is a project management role. So I can't be going for an health and safety officer's role, and you'll be seeing SQL and all of that. They are irrelevant for such a role. Do you understand? Since it's project management role you're going for, they're IT product, they're IT project that you might be applying for. So you might as well just put it there if you have that understanding of what that is. Does that make any sense to anybody? Was that useful, really? Was that useful? Okay, good. So today, we're talking about assumption. We'll talk about risk very quickly. We'll talk about issues. So like I said earlier on, basically what we're talking about today is the role of a project PMO, the role of a PMO analyst, the role of a PMO person, and all that. Everything we've spoken about in the last 4 weeks is you need to have that understanding. You need to have that understanding. You need to be able to understand, okay, what if my project manager walks away, and as a PMO person they say, for the first 2 weeks while the project manager is on holiday, you have to take charge of this project. What do I do? So that's what we've been talking about since. So what are assumptions? So on your project, remember last week we spoke about cardiac. Last week we spoke about cardiac, and under cardiac I told you guys that we have the change control, the constraint, assumptions, risk, and all of that. So you must always have a log. You must have a log that is called the cardiac log or the rate log. So if you go on Google, you can type in rate log, templates and all of that. You will always see that. So as a PMO person, this is your property. Log is your property. Like my program manager is always asking me that, Ayo, please, can you check that document in? Can you check that document? Because it's my property, I always check it out. I always check it out on my laptop because I need to always continually work on it. I need to understand what is exactly in there. If someone is asking me that, oh, you know what, Ayo, I've got an action. I've got an action to do this, to do that. When was that? When was that documented? Or I need to chase a project manager to say, you know what, Mike, you've got an action that is due tomorrow. The project manager will not go in there. As a PMO person, you are the one that should be keeping tab on all of these and make sure that you're making the life of the project manager quite easy to say, oh, project manager win. You've got this action that is that is going to be due in the next couple of days. What are we doing about it? If this is not done, this will affect that. It will have. So what you've done so far, you've done your analysis on the job. So what are assumptions? So on that particular log, you have your assumption log as well. An assumption is that which is taken for granted or supposed. So on project, there are a lot of assumptions. A typical example is a project I gave you. I gave you a project and I made an assumption to say, you know what, I assumed that all the documents will have been sent to admin. I made that assumption. I didn't make it clear. I made that assumption. And at the end of the day, the assumption wasn't true because nobody sent it to admin. Does that make any sense? I made the assumption. Well, they should know now. I'm assuming that they should send it to admin. They send it to admin, then admin should have that documented. It should send it to me without me making. So whenever we're talking about assumption, there will be a lot of assumption. And another assumption you can have on a project like your 1000 laptop migration that we spoke about. A typical assumption is we assumed that every of the laptops are on on Microsoft 2010. Office 2010 at the moment. If we assume that, we need to document that down. That we assumed because I think 5 years ago we migrated everything to 2010. So we're saying that we're assuming. So we've documented assumption. Another assumption we can document is we are assuming that the mayor might not be around during this period. So our laptop might not get migrated. So that is also an assumption. So what are you doing with this assumption? You're documenting this assumption so that you can sit around the table to say, you know what, we have this assumption, we have that assumption, we have that assumption. How true are these assumptions? And before you know it, some of these assumptions will become risk. So one of the ways to to identify your risk is via assumption. So on a project, always document as a PMO person, whenever you're in the meeting or whenever you're talking to your project managers or you're talking to team members, when they raise assumptions, ask them questions. How solid is this assumption?
Yeah.
I think I need to document this. Yes, someone is asking me a question. Okay, I think I need to document this. As a PMO person, you have to always document things. Okay, something that we cannot establish as being true at this point in time, but it is likely to be true. With project, there is always a high degree of unknowns. Unknowns, assumptions. Have to make assumptions to move forward. Assumptions can be wrong. Remember, like I said, I made an assumption, I was wrong. They have an element of risk. Remember, they have an element of risk. Because they have an element of risk, that is why you need to have your assumption log and make sure that assumptions are documented. Now, the last point says when documenting an assumption, you have to consider the confidence. Remember, I said it, one of the things I said you need to ask, how confident are you with this assumption? How sure are you with this assumption? Always ask that question As if your project manager, if you're in a meeting and your project manager is not asking this, or you are the project manager, if a team member is telling you an assumption, you need to ask, how confident are you with this assumption? What is the lead time? How long before we can prove or disprove this assumption? What will be the impact of this assumption if it's incorrect or if it is correct? Make sense? So you need to always make sure that all of that are documented. A typical example is we'll obtain 60% of the market over the first year based on market research. Oh, really? What is going to tell us that? Do we have a market research? Have we done a proper market research to tell us that we'll gain 60% of the market in our first year? Yes, it's been recorded. Femi. Yep. Okay, so that's our assumption. Let's talk about risk. All right, so we'll spend more time on risk as well as change controls. I'll spend like 10 minutes on risk and a few minutes on change control. Okay, when we talk about risk are there to destroy the project. And I'll say that risks are there to destroy your project. So that is why you need to make sure that risks are documented. And one of the best way you can document risk, people, is as a PMO person. Guys, when you get into an organization as a PMO, as a project manager, and you're doing your PMO, you're documenting things and all of that. One of the things you need to do, and I'll tell you, on my project that I am at the moment, we made that mistake. We made that terrible mistake as well. When I came in, I thought that a risk workshop had been done without knowing that risk workshop had not been done. So when I called the risk workshop, it was already late because a lot of risk had already materialized into issue. So whenever you get on the project, always as a project manager, always persuade your team members to say, you know what, let's have a risk workshop, a 2-hour, a 3-hour week risk workshop. Say, let's lock ourselves in this room, in this particular conference room. What are the risks that could happen? So let's group our risk to say project one. Let's focus on project one at the moment. What are the risks you guys can think about concerning project one, concerning project two? So as a PMO person, this is your baby as well. You have to be the one to facilitate. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the one to identify risk. Yours is to facilitate the workshop. Facilitating the workshop in the sense that you're saying that let's do this. Okay, we're going. So you have the planner in your hand to say we're doing project one first. From there, we'll move to project B, we'll move to project C, we'll move to project D, and all of that. So yours is to say, okay, yes, we're coordinating this. And while everyone is throwing their risk around on the post sheets, majorly, I use post sheet a lot to say, you know what, I'm using post sheet, everybody get sticky notes on your tables, write the risk you're putting there. Then when let's post it on the board. Then from there, we can now drill it down to say, okay, what is the analysis of this? So when we do that, we're saying that risk is an uncertain event or set of circumstances that should it occur, will have an effect on the project. So should it occur, will have an effect on the project. So because of that, we need to make sure that we are managing the risk properly. Okay, so how do we manage risk? First of all, we need to make sure that we have a proper risk management plan. And the proper risk management plan, like I said earlier on, is for you to say way we want to manage our risk is we want to manage risk by work streams, or we want to categorize the risk, say IT risk, procurement risk, project management risk, engineering risk, and all that. So you can categorize your risk like that. Then you now need to define your parameters. Defining parameters in the sense that on this particular project, and I'll show you one of the parameters that we use on my project very soon. So now say, you know what, guys, we've identified a risk. The risk we've identified is there is a risk of one of the laptops or few of the laptops not accepting Office 365 because they are not Windows 10. Okay, that is a risk. So I want to say, okay, guys, what is the likelihood? What is the likelihood that we will get few laptops that will not accept Office 365 because they are not Windows 10 laptop? So we're saying that, guys, okay, what we want to use is do we want to use numeric parameters, or we want to use color coding parameters, or want to use word parameters. So numeric parameter is saying that we're saying 1 to 5, where 5 is the highest and 1 is the lowest. Or we want to say no, let us use color coding to say red, amber, green. To say green is it's minimal, amber is it's medium, while red is high. Or we're saying no, we're using words. Words is we're using very low, low, medium, high, very high. So your organization will do, you have to define that with the organization if they don't have something in place already. But if they have something in place, you don't have to bother yourself in understanding your risk management categorization parameters or trigger or identifying tools. All you just need to move to is just move to identify and analyze risk directly. So with this, you're saying including likelihood. What is the likelihood that we're saying that from 1 to 5? What is the likelihood? Because we know LBB seems archaic. They're not like London. They're not like Chelsea, Borough, and all of that. So they are like archaic in a way. So there is possibility that some of the laptops might still be might be in Windows 7 or Vista and not Windows 10. I'm sure you now know my age while I'm talking about Vista and all of that. So with that, Windows 10 was saying that okay, what's the likelihood? The likelihood is 4 because the possibility is so high, the probability is so high. Okay, what will now be the impact? Should we have few laptops that are lower in OS? If the OS is lower, if the operating system is lower, what will be the impact? The impact is we'll have to delay us. That means we'll have to fill another proposal or another business case to buy OS to be able to agree that, and it might be another project or the scope of a project might get changed. The scope of the project might get changed to say let's include OS installation to laptops that might not. Do you understand? So the impact will be high. That means it might delay our project. So what you've done there is you define what parameters you want to use. Then let's identify triggers and thresholds. What will be our triggers? Trigger in the sense that what could make us say this risk is about to materialize. Okay, what is our threshold? If the risk is just affecting 2 days of work, we can accommodate that. If a risk, we can say that's medium, or if a risk is just affecting £5,000 of the project, we can say that that's a medium risk or it's a low risk. If a risk is less than £1,000, we can say that's a low risk. But if it's more than £1,000, we're saying medium. If it's more than £5,000, we're saying high. So you're quantifying the level of your risk parameters as well. So that is what you do. So there is always a document that's called a risk management strategy. If you go on YouTube and you download risk management, you go on Google and you download risk management strategy template, these are things you will see in there. You can always fine tune into whatever you have within your organization. So from there, you have to identify risk. Identifying risk, there are several ways in which you can identify risk. One of the ways I use in identifying risk on my project is basically doing a workshop. Another way to do that is doing a peer review. You can do a peer review to say, you know what, it's not a workshop. I'm a project manager. I'm calling another project manager to say, you know what, because you have this expert experience, because you've done something similar before, is it possible for you and I to go through the risk that could occur on my project? One of the ways you can do that also is by looking at your lessons learned document. One of the documents I asked you to prepare. You can look at the lessons learned document. Inside the lessons learned document, there will definitely be some lessons learned in the past that might be risk that happened while you were on the risk that you might document as a risk on your project as well. So that's why we say classify them. And in the classification of risk, you can say, okay, this is IT risk, this is workstream risk, this is project management risk, or this is a program risk. Then what you can do now again is you need to document those risks. How do you mitigate? You need to understand, how do I mitigate these particular risk? Okay, like I said here, if you look at this way, like I said, risk workshops are very effective way of, it's the most effective way of identifying risk workshop. Always advise. And whenever you're doing your interview as well, when they ask you, prop yourself up. Tell them you conducted risk workshop, or you conducted planning workshop, you conducted a workshop where we try to identify the risk and the issues and all of that. what I is saying about you is you've got a facilitating skill, and as a PMO person, that is one of the skills you need to have in order to be able to get all the project managers working. Okay, so we have let's these are categories of risk. These are examples. These are not cast in stone categorization of risk. These are just my own way of saying we need to categorize. We need to categorize by external risk. External risk are things they are not under our control. A typical example of risk we are facing at the moment is we're supposed to get a planning permit, and there's a risk that we might not be able to get planning permit from the local authority as a when due. So that is an external risk that there is nothing we can do about it. This is not somewhere where I came from originally, where you can go there and give them some tips, and before you know it, your permit can come out in less than 2 hours. Permit you've been waiting for 3 months can come out in less than 2 hours. So here you have to follow the protocol. If they're telling you that is it. So that is an external risk that there is nothing you can do about it than to accept this particular risk. Or one of the ways, if you identify the risk, one of the ways you can avoid or mitigate that risk is to make sure that you're consulting someone that has got an experience in that particular field who can document a lot of things that are needed to make sure that there's no back and forth between yourself and the local authority on the planning permit. So that is external risk. Project governance associated with standardization, compliance of project management processes. What is a governance? We can say this is about meeting. There's a risk that the MD might not be available to sign a check. The MD might not be available to sign a check. That talks about governance. Okay, if the MD is not available, who else can sign the check? Is there any other person that is delegated authority? A typical example is for some of you that might go into contracting job. Contractors don't have they have limited authority within an organization. And one of the limited authority they have within an organization is a contractor cannot single-handedly hire another contractor. I'll come back again. So within most organizations that goes this, they have this policy. As I'm a contractor, as a PMO person, as a PMO lead or PMO manager, I can't say, okay, I need a PMO analyst to work with me, and I put the request in, and I'm doing the recruitment all by myself, and I'm bringing in the person in. No, you need a permanent staff to have a second opinion on whoever you're trying to recruit, because they will believe that maybe you're just bringing in your brother or just bringing someone from your company, and you're not following the due process. So there will always be a permanent person within the organization that has got no conflict of interest, that must be able to judge the whole process properly. And also you can have a contractor that you are reporting to, but within the organization, that is not your reporting line. There is always a permanent staff that you will report to, that will be able to sign your timesheet, sign your contract, and all of that. So that is what we're saying, project governance as well. So if that person is not available, then people related to human resources. Okay, I don't have this particular resource. There is a risk that when we get here, we might not get this particular. So that is your project categorization. Like I said, this is just my own categorization. You can get to an organization and they have a different way of categorizing risk entirely. Okay, so we've been talking about, you know what, guys, you need to manage your risk, you need to identify your risk, you need to make sure you document your risk. Where exactly do you document your risk? There is a document that is called a risk register. Somewhere you will see it as a risk log. Somewhere you see as risk register, somewhere you see as risk log. That is where you document your risk. So this is what a risk register looks like. And I'm sure that within your group, within your group, you produce risk register, because I told you that you need to document risk and all of that. You need to produce a risk register. I'm just giving you that exercise. So as a PMO person, guys, or as a project manager that has got no PMO to work with, you're the project manager. This is a document that at the start of a project, you need to have it. You need to have all the logs. All the logs can be in one Excel spreadsheet. Sheet 1 is changed. Sheet 2 is your risk log. Sheet 3 is your issue log. Sheet 4 is your DA. So you just have your one document that is called the cardiac log or the RAID log that has got all of these logs, different various logs in there. And you have your risk register. Inside your risk register, you have your reference number. You have the description of the risk. What exactly is the description of the risk? What is the impact of this risk if it should occur? What are the actions we need to put in place to trigger it? What is the likelihood? What is the impact? Severity is derived from multiplying likelihood and impact. So if I'm saying that the likelihood of 4 laptops not being on Windows 10 is 4. The impact, if it should happen, is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So that particular risk is a high risk. Does that make sense? That's what severity is talking about. That means a high risk. What is the financial impact on the project? We're saying that, you know what? The financial impact on the project is, if it's a medium, if it's a high risk, that is talking about £5,000 and above, of or 1 million naira and above. Owner, who is the owner? We need to set an owner so that the person can look after the risk. Okay, the owner of this particular risk is Emmanuel. We're saying it's Emmanuel. What day was it raised? It was raised today. Raised today, 4th of August. What is the status? The status is green at the moment, or is red at the moment, or is amber at the moment. Is the risk opened or closed? The risk is still opened. We've not closed the risk. So if a risk has been addressed, then we can close the risk if the risk has been addressed. So this is a document. There's a log you have to always come into and document your risk every time. A typical example is a project I'm on at the moment. The project started last year, August, that I'm on at the moment. This is August, another year. That's 1 year. And in our risk log, you know what? We have 120 something risk documented already. And out of the 120 risks that are documented, maybe like 7 of them has been moved to issues. Like I said earlier on, they were key ones that happened. So we had to move them to we had to move them to issue. So you have to always make sure that these are documented. Now, as a PMO person, guys, as a PMO person, your job is not to explain what is the impact if it should occur. No, your job is to document. Your job is to speak to the project manager and make sure that everything is documented. We're saying that there's a risk of 4 of the laptops being in Windows 7 and one in Windows 10, thereby not accepting Office 365. Fine. As a PMO person, guys, I'm not a technical person. I don't know the impact. What is the impact if it should occur? The impact is there will be delay. So I need to go and meet the project manager. Okay, this risk you mentioned in the meeting earlier on. Okay, I'm now setting up a 10 minute or a 30-minute meeting to say, you know what, these are a few risks we mentioned in the meeting earlier today. Can we put some flesh to? Can we actually explain what this risk is and put some meat or flesh into this? So so the project manager is telling you, okay, it's gonna get delayed by 7 days and all of that. What's the likelihood of it happening? The likelihood of it happening is medium. Da, 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 da. So you're documenting all of these with the help of the project manager. So that is what you have when we talk about risk register. Now, earlier on, I said I'm going to show you a grid. Like you can see, this grid is a 4x4 grid, and you will always see this a lot of places. So you can see now that if the likelihood is 4 and the impact is 4, we're saying that this particular risk is critical. So that is what we're using. We're saying, you know what, this is a critical risk. If the likelihood is 4 and the impact is 3, yes, it's high. If the likelihood is 1, if the likelihood is 1 and the impact is 1, it is insignificant. We don't have to stress ourselves on this. You know what? It's insignificant. We don't have to stress ourselves. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. So we don't have to stress ourselves. So these are things, and as a PMO person, I will always advise you that whenever you have your project meeting, weekly project meeting, fortnightly project meeting, make sure you bring risks that are about to materialize. Risks that are about to materialize in less than 1 week, in less than 2 weeks. Bring it to the meeting to say, you know what, we have these particular 4 risks that we have a due date. The due date of this particular 4 risks will be next week. So we need to understand what are the status, where are we with this particular 4 risks. That is your job as a PMO person. You have to be on top of everything. You have to be on top of everything. You have to keep on challenging to say, you know what, we have this action, we have this risk, we have this issue, we have these activities in the plan that we're saying that we will finish by Friday. Today is Thursday, or today is Tuesday. Where are we? Are we sure we are still on track? So as a PMO person, that is your job, to be making sure that everything within a project is going on. Don't forget that the project manager is doing its own, but because you hold all of these documents, they believe that you should challenge. The project manager is thinking about a lot of things. So as a PMO person, challenge, ask, remind the project manager. And if you are the project manager, you need to keep tab about all of these as well. Okay. Yeah, it's just still explaining. This is a 5x4 stuff. So let's go to, so how do you respond to risk? How do you respond to risk? You respond to negative risk in these 4 ways. And I'm sure you must have seen it before. Now, a typical example is it's raining. It's raining and I need to go get something from, I live in Unchurch. It's raining and I need to go get something in Romford. If I need to go get something in Romford, if it's raining, what do I do? And I need to get something in Romford. I can avoid it to say, you know what, I'm not going. When the rain stops, I'll go. Now, I'm avoiding that because maybe what I needed to collect is not really that important. And I say, you know what, I'll go. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to avoid the risk of rain. Okay, I'm saying, you know what, why not let me call Uber and tell Uber to get it for me and bring it, since I don't really want to go out, I don't really want to go there. What I've done is I've transferred that risk to someone that has got the capability to handle that particular risk, the Uber guy. I've transferred the risk to him to say, you know what, Uber, go get it. I've paid the guy. Like we get our insurance. We're transferring the risk of accident, the risk of issues to the insurance company. So that is what we call risk transfer. So you can address a risk by transferring the risk. Mitigation is reducing the risk. I can say, you know what? Yeah, I'll go with umbrella. I'll go with umbrella. At least if I go with umbrella and get on the bus and all of that, I've reduced the impact. That doesn't mean it's not raining. That doesn't mean the rain will not touch me at some point. But what I've done so far is I've reduced the impact of that rain on myself. Now, another one is acceptance, to say, you know what? I'll just go in the rain. No matter what is happening, I'll just go. And I always tell people that you can only accept you can only accept you can only accept uh, um, you can only accept risks that are low. I can't tell you that, okay, like what is happening at the moment, coronavirus is everywhere and all that. And I say, you know what, there is coronavirus in Queen's Hospital everywhere. If you step your leg into Queen's Hospital in Romford, there's coronavirus everywhere. And you're saying, but I want to go and do blood test. And I say, you know what, I'm accepting the risk. Really? Because you need to do blood tests, you're accepting the risk. Why not let them send the kits to you and get the blood off you, or call the ambulance, come and get the blood off you in your house if it's that really important? Do you understand? So why do you want to accept a risk that is very high? So I always advise people to only accept risks that are very, very low. Fumi is asking, is it the role of the PMO to help mitigate the risk? No, your job is, you can't mitigate the risk. Don't forget that most of the risk we're talking about are technical risk and all that. So you can't mitigate the risk for anybody. But what you can do, except the risk that you are the owner, if a risk is attached to you, a typical example is, let's assume they're saying that, okay, before I joined this particular project, there was a risk that was attached to me before I joined, that was attached to PMO, and to say, you know what, there's a risk that some document might be missing on people's local machine because we don't have a SharePoint. That's a risk that was attached to say, who is not this? Is a PMO. So you can see that particular risk. When I came on board, all I needed to do for them was to go and meet a corporate organization. I bought SharePoint license and we developed the SharePoint. And I told everybody that, you know what, you can't afford to use document on your local machine anymore. You need to always transfer all the document you work on or work directly from the SharePoint. So with that, what I've done to that particular risk is I have mitigated the risk of us losing documents. So with that, I can close that risk to say, you know what, I'm closing this risk because we have mitigated that risk by making sure that we have a SharePoint. So you can see that I'm the owner. I was the owner of that risk. So as a PMO person, you can only mitigate risks that are yours. You can't mitigate the risk, but yours is to make sure that everybody are on top of their risk. All the risk owners are on top of their risk, and they are mitigating or responding. Let me put it that way: they are responding to the risk the way they should respond to the risk. Okay, so let's look at the process. I'm spending more time on risk because risk issues and change are almost the same. So let's talk about what are the process of you identifying risk. You can see the first thing is as a PMO person, look at that. So you can see identify the risk. So you're not the one identifying the risk. The team, the entire team are identifying the risk. So when the team identifies the risk, your job is to log the risk. Number two, log the risk. And you can see that it's talking about project manager. So you are there to support the project manager. So like this particular role, you're doing it with the project manager, but your job is to make sure that this is locked. You are assigned to a different team. Are you assigning the risk to a different team? Then communicate the detail of the risk number to a different team. Let's assume you are working for IT team, someone else is working for accounting, and the risk someone has identified a particular risk, or your project manager has identified a particular risk, SAP might not get integrated into our project. At that particular point in time, well, this is an accounting risk. So let's assign it to account department. If it's not accounting risk, then let's qualify the risk. Qualifying the risk is what is the probability of the risk occurring? What is the impact if the risk should occur? So we're trying to qualify the risk. So is this a risk? No. Then what is it? It's an action. Because sometimes you will you will say it's a risk, and at the end of it, you just know that no, that's not a risk, that's just an action. Someone just needs to go do the job. It's not a risk, it's an action. So you need to identify, is that a risk or an action? Yeah, no, it's an action, it's a task, whatever, then someone should go and do it. Then yes, then let's manage the risk. Do we need to escalate the risk? If it's a no, then let's talk about risk disposition. Risk disposition is, what do we do with this risk? Do we need to mitigate the risk? Yes, let's propose a mitigation plan. Do we need to track as issues or task? Then let's move it to issue. Then this is not a risk anymore, it has occurred. A risk that has occurred is an issue. What do we do? Do we avoid or transfer? We avoid or we transfer. If we are avoiding it, that's going to affect the scope of work. Then we need to raise a change control process. If we are accepting it, then there's no point in disturbing ourselves in the risk. Let's just go and hand it straight. So if it's a mitigation, if it's a proposed mitigation plan accepted, what are we doing? Mitigation plan is we need to buy SharePoint. Is it accepted? Yes. Then let's execute it. Then deploy SharePoint. Does that make sense? Good. Any questions so far on risk? Okay. Yomi is asking, I guess we could accept any risk that his impact is very low and within tolerance. Absolutely, Yomi. That's why I said only accept risks that are of low probability or impact, please. Okay, Yomi is asking again, is can residual risk be avoided in PM work? I will always say it's a no, sincerely, because you know what? I'm an health and safety professional as well as I'm a project management professional. There is something we always say in the health and safety world, that you can never eradicate risk totally. There will always be a residual risk. There will always be a tiny risk. So you just have to always keep your eyes open should anything happen. So I will say uh, no, because don't forget that one of the key attributes we spoke about risk is a risk is there is uncertainty on project, that we spoke about project, that uncertainty. Something will always occur. Something will always occur. Okay, so we recommend acceptance of residual risk. This is dependent on what exactly are we talking about concerning the residual. We still need to analyze it, because a residual risk at some point will materialize into an actual risk that we need to now start watching. So it is a residual risk at some point, but we need to look at, okay, what do we respond? Sometimes you can transfer residual risk. Sometimes you can still reduce the residual risk further. But while you're mitigating the residual risk further, there will still be some residual risk within that residual risk. Does that make any sense? So it's just to be watchful and see how best you can minimize the impact of such risk. Any further question, please? Okay, in the absence of none, let's go further. So risk and issues are the same thing. So it's the same process we're talking about risk that we would definitely use for issues. The only difference is a risk that has materialized is called issue. So if we identify a particular risk, a typical example is, oh, there's a risk of 4 laptops being in Windows 7 and on Windows 10, and we're saying that okay, and we locked the risk, but we didn't do anything about it to say, you know what, we need to run a test on all of those. We didn't do anything. It was not a point where we now needed to migrate those laptops. We now discovered that, you know what, we can't install Office 365 on these 4 machines because they are still in Windows 7. They're not in Windows 10 yet. Now, we now have an issue on our hands. Does that make any sense? With that, it now moves to an issue. But most times, we also need to follow this. That's the issue log. You can see similar to what we have as risk log. You should have an issue log as well. You should have a process. You should have a process as well. You can see that the process also is the same. Identify, log it, qualify, issue exists, manage the issue, do we need escalation, issue disposition, resolve, track as change, track as risk. Okay, you can see that. So it's almost the same thing. All right, Yomi is asking that, would you recommend escalating outside of a chain of command if a potential risk isn't being taken seriously by relevant ownership? Yes, I will recommend that. But while I'm recommending that, you need to know how to manage your stakeholders still, so that people will not say that you're backbiting or you're trying to get a job, you're trying to get them off the job. So you have to know how to manage it. And one of the best way to manage it, like I said, is set up a meeting. Just say, you know what? Why don't we have a risk workshop, or why don't we discuss on this? While you're setting the agenda, and one of the best way to do that as a PMO is, while you're setting up the agenda for the next meeting, put it there to say risk discussion. We'll be discussing risk, and these are the risks we are discussing. Just put it there: risk 1, risk 2, risk 3, and put the hyperlink of the log on your shared drive. Put the hyperlink there so that everybody can know ahead that we'll be discussing this. So that is a very good forum where you can discuss or escalate these to people, because everybody is there. You're discussing the issue. It's not that you're just picking out one person out to escalate to the upper part, but you're discussing that together. Okay. Any other question? Dependency. So dependency, let's quickly talk about dependency as well. For dependency basically is what I spoke about earlier on to say, you know, whenever you're doing your MS project, or some are using projectmanagement.com. I've never used that before. Or you're using your Primavera, or you're using your Astapa project, or you're using your okay, I can show you. Okay, can you see my screen? If you can see my screen, say yes. If it's too tiny, let me know. It's too tiny. This is a planet. This is called a Pathmaster risk analysis. So this is used in doing risk analysis. You know, the risk I just told you about now, about risk management I just told you about, that is just it. As a risk manager, so we always have risk managers. We can have risk manager on project. As a risk manager on project, I will expect my risk manager to be able to use this particular tool. So this particular tool is called the Primavera risk analysis. Sometimes you can call it the Pathmaster. But I'm not going to go into what this does really. I'm just going to talk to you about dependencies. So I've got a dummy activities here. So what this is saying is, if you look at this, can you see that it's showing me F, and this is showing me start? So what this is saying is, this first activity needs to finish before this activity can start. Can you see that? So now, while activity 0, 0020 and 0003 is showing that both of them are doing what? They are finishing together. Meaning, I'm saying that a typical example is to say that, who am I gonna? Okay, Yomi, and we need to meet at right now, Stratford, Westfield. We need to meet at Stratford, Westfield at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Now, Yomi is coming from Acne, while I am coming from Brixton or Brighton or whatever. Now, we will definitely, the journey will not start at the same time because it's two different things. But we are finishing at the same time because we're finishing at the same point. We are both going to Westfield. We're saying that, let's meet at Topman shop or Top shop at Westfield. That is our meeting point. He might leave Acne, he will go on overground. So he will leave Acne in just 20 minutes and he's in Stratford. I'm coming from Brixton. I need to leave like 4 hours or 2 hours before to be able to get to that point at 2 p.m. So we are finishing the journey together at Top Shop at Westfield, but not necessarily starting together. So that is another dependency that is called a finish to finish dependency. When we finish, we're saying that our meeting is 1 hour. By 3 p.m., we will be leaving Westfield together, meaning we're starting the journey together, but that does not necessarily mean we will get home at the same time. That is what is called a start to start. So if you look at 003 and 004, it is what? A start to start relationship, a start to start dependency. So you always have a start to start dependency, a finish to finish dependency, or a finish to start dependency, meaning this activity needs to finish before that activity can start. Does that make any sense? Any question? Okay, so this is all about dependency. That is all you need to know about dependency. And sometimes they will tell you there are external dependencies and are internal dependencies. Now, external and internal dependencies tells me that there are some dependencies that are external to the project. A typical example of an external dependency on a project is what I shared with you earlier on to say, you know what? We've got a planning permit. That is external. We are dependent on the approval. Is external to our project. We can't control it. Is external. But we're saying that, you know what? We need to be able to lay this brick before we need to be able to dig the hole before we can start laying the brick. That is internal. That is an internal dependency. Is within a project. We can control it. Does that make any sense? So uh, uh, this is what dependency is all about. Any question on dependency? So I'm gonna stop sharing again so that I can share my slide again. Any question? I'm giving 2 minutes. Yes, you hear me? Yes. Primavera. I discovered that you could download Primavera for free just a few days ago on Oracle website. Yes, there is free. Yeah. Yes, some are free. You can get Pathmaster for free, and you can get Primavera Release 19, P6 Release 19 for free as well on the Oracle website. Okay, so let's continue. Change control process. What do we mean by change control process? Change control process is, and for change control process, guys, they bring in people that they call change manager. They bring in a change manager on the job who they pay a lot of money to just come and manage change. Because if changes or change are not managed on a project, that can destroy your project totally. So you need to make sure that change control process is in place on your project. So how do we do this? Let's quickly look at a change ensures a methodical approach for capturing, managing, and implementing changes. Ongoing management of changes and announcements in a single standard tool, meaning there should be a change request, there should be a change request or a change log. Just like we have risk log, there should be a change log. Now, some organizations will use Jira as their change tool. Some organizations will use their change tool in SharePoint. Some organizations will use Word documents, while some organizations might develop an entirely new product. for them. A typical example is when I worked for an organization somewhere in Wokingham, we were using IBM developed a tool for us to manage our change. Do you understand? So because we were managing an IT change, instead of us going for Jira off the shelf, no, we didn't pick up Jira. We went for a new tool entirely, and we used that new tool to work on our change. Okay, so let's talk about the change process. I'm more concerned about this change process. This is the major guy here. So this is a change control. This is a change control process which you must be able to manage. You must be able to manage your change control as a PMO person. As a PMO, you must understand how to manage change.